Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Fearless Podcast, a show dedicated to all things related to fear, anxiety, and general mental well-being. I'm your host, Zack, and on this week's episode, I'm super excited to bring you guys a conversation between myself and Elizabeth Baker. Elizabeth is a former Mountain Valley resident. She's an alumni who graduated earlier this year, actually. She reached out to me in the past couple of weeks to give me an update on how well she was doing and asking if she could come on the show. She had a couple of topics that she was really passionate about talking about. One of them is milieu therapy and what a good milieu can do for treatment, so we'll touch on that. But really what she does is she articulates her entire journey, what was going on before Mountain Valley, what led her to Mountain Valley, what kind of things she did at Mountain Valley that facilitated change, and where she's at today. As you'll hear, Elizabeth is an incredibly well-spoken and inspiring young person who I'm super excited to have on this episode today to share with you all, because I think she's going to inspire many of you to go out there and face some of your fears. So much wisdom at such a young age. Before we hop into the episode, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Mountain Valley Treatment Center. Mountain Valley is a residential treatment program located in Plainfield, New Hampshire that serves adolescents and young adults ages 13 to 20 who are struggling with anxiety, OCD, and related disorders. I'm fortunate enough to be the executive director of the show, and they sponsor my ability to be able to do this podcast, create this content, and get all of this out to you. If you'd love to learn more about Mountain Valley, what we do, what we're all about, who we serve, how we do it, check out our website at www.mountainvalleytreatment.org. Thanks so much, and enjoy this episode with Elizabeth Baker. Hey, Elizabeth. Welcome to the show.
Hello. My name is Elizabeth Baker. I am 15 years old, and I am from South Jersey, right near Philly.
And we are having you on the podcast today because you are a former Mountain Valley resident, one of our alumni. We love to have our alumni on the show. They're often some of our most downloaded and popular episodes, and you reached out to me just a little while ago. It's taken us a little while to nail the date down, saying that you wanted to share your story in hopes that it might be able to help some other people out there. So super appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. My story was a wild ride, to say the least.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so let's start off with before Mountain Valley. So what was going on in your life that kind of even led to you needing to engage in residential treatment, or for you and your family to be looking at residential?
I was very depressed in middle school, very anxious, didn't like going to school. I mean, no kid loves going to school, but I was firmly against it, and I would often just refuse to get out of bed and be like, no, I'm not going to go to school, actually. And then I came to freshman year of high school, and we were all hoping it would get better, sort of willing, it's going to get better. It's going to get better once you go to high school, like everything sort of going to change. And it changed for a little bit, like for a few months. I was like, okay, I'll just do this, I guess. And then I stopped going to school again as, nothing really changed. So of course I'm going to stop going to school again. And I had gone through partial hospitalization programs a lot. I think I've been to around 4. So we sent me to one of those, and, it didn't really work. It felt like a Band-Aid fix. It was like, okay, I'm not going to school now because I'm going to this thing instead. And then they were like, okay, you can go to school now. And I was like, no. But then you're not going to school until eventually during the summer. My parents were like, well, you have to go next year. And I was like, no. And they were like, then we're going to send you somewhere. So yeah, right after my birthday is August 3rd, and I left for treatment August 11th. I packed up things and I drove all the way to New Hampshire.
So I appreciate you sharing all that, and I really appreciate you touching on some of the more, as you call them, like Band-Aid solutions, and a lot of that sort of wishful thinking for a better future. Well, when I start this new school, things are going to change, or when I turn to high school, things are going to change, and that's a lot of the same stuff that we hear from many of the kids and families who are thinking about Mountain Valley. Well, maybe after camp, or maybe once after this family vacation we go on, like things are going to be better. And I think what you've probably learned and what we've learned from doing this work is like nothing gets better until we get to like the core of the issue. And sometimes that takes really intensive therapeutic work and a lot of time and self-reflection to kind of get there. So before we start talking about how we kind of facilitated that for you at Mountain Valley, I'm really curious to hear, like, how did you respond when your parents kind of said, "Hey, we're gonna have to send you somewhere. We're gonna have to look at residential treatment." What was that like for you?
I mean, I wasn't thrilled. I was like, no, what? No, I'll be fine. Actually, that was later. Actually, first I decided, okay, let's look at some. And then I decided, no, never mind, I hate all of these options. So I looked at a few. Um, I, I looked at a bunch of websites, and a lot of them were just like not great fits. I mean, a lot of residential treatment programs are for like a lot like severe depression or substance issues. That's very common. I was struggling with depression, but it was more so the anxiety. And Mountain Valley is one of the only places that like specializes in anxiety and OCD treatment. So I looked at that and I still said no, I don't want to go. And while I was at summer camp, I actually had to get on a call with I think Everett or
Yeah.
someone to be like, hey, how are you doing? You want to go to Mountain Valley? Like, to see if I was a good fit. And I was just sobbing because I was at summer camp. I didn't even have my parents. They
Mhm.
pulled me out of like my bunk and they were like, hey, you got to go have a call. And I was like, what? And I was like, okay.
Mm.
At that point, I guess I had already been confirmed going there. And then I came back from summer camp and I was like, yeah, I'm definitely not going. Just not going to get out of bed. I'm just not going to. You're not making me go. You're going to pick me up and carry me to the car. I'm not going to pack my stuff. I'm not going to bring anything. You're going to have to ship me off in my pajamas. And then I came around to it once I realized my parents weren't going to be like, okay, you can stay. I was just like, damn, wait, I don't want to be shipped off in my pajamas. So I did end up willingly going and being like, okay, I guess if I have to go.
I'm so happy you touched on that, like that all of those thoughts that you had. I'm not going to go. You can't make me go. That's a lot of stuff that, again, we hear a lot of residents say on the front side. And then parents get really anxious and they get really nervous of like, oh my God, what if they don't go? We haven't even been able to get them to school. How am I going to get them in a car all packed up and like heading up to New Hampshire? And what you just kind of highlighted is like sometimes when working with anxious children, they'll say things, but then their behavior will be different than what they actually say that they're going to do. And so I think it's probably helpful for any parents that are listening now. And if you're thinking about Mountain Valley and you're listening to this episode and you're hearing your kid in your living room saying, like, I'm not going, there might be a part of your kid, a wiser part of your kid that's in there that knows that they need it. And when push comes to shove, when the day comes, they will actually get in the car and they will go. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I saw that very commonly, where kids would talk about how like, yeah, I did not want to be here. I thought this place would be awful. Like they refused to get in the car, and then they came and they were like, I mean, like you can't really just refuse. Well, you can refuse to, but it's a lot harder to refuse to when you're in the moment and you're actually at the choice point, as
Hmm.
my Mountain Valley lingo kicks in. When you're actually at the choice point, it's a lot easier to choose the right not the option that would be better for you, rather than I'm gonna refuse to go.
And if there are any kids listening to this episode right now who are thinking about Mountain Valley and they're in that mode of like, I'm not going to go, or this isn't going to work, or it's not for me, what's something you would say to them?
Let me think on this one.
Hmm.
It's not as bad as it's gonna be worked up to be in your head. Because you're not there yet. You haven't met the people there. It's one complete unknown. And obviously it's gonna be scary. But it's not as bad as you're imagining it in your head. Like, they don't do anything evil. It's a very nice program. I mean, it's one of the better residentials, I presume. Almost all of the kids that I've seen graduate have said that they are glad that they went there.
Thanks for saying that. I appreciate it. So let's go back to your story. I'm not going. Okay, I guess I have to go. You're getting in a car, you're driving up to New Hampshire. Had you ever even been to New Hampshire before?
No.
Yeah.
I haven't even been to New England yet first.
What's running through your mind as you're coming in for intake day and showing up to rural New Hampshire, driving down that long river road in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Pulling up to campus. Talk to me a little bit about what was happening in your mind and body at that time.
I had a very strange coping mechanism.
Mm,
Well, first of all, I slept for most of the car ride because we left at 3 a.m. because
wow.
we had to get there like 10 a.m. or something. My thing was if I just pretend that I'm fine, they'll just let me leave immediately. They'll go, oh yeah, you don't have to be here. Didn't work. So I came in and obviously I'm being really anxious or intake and they're just like, and I'm not speaking at all. And I'm like, no, you have to speak or they're going to think you need to be here.
Mm,
So I'm doing my tour. I don't remember where anything is because I'm obviously not paying attention to the tour.
yeah.
I'm paying attention to how anxious I am and how awkward the small talk my mom is making with the tour giver. Because of course that's what I'm paying attention to.
Mm,
I don't care where the kitchen is. I care that I'm making a good first impression,
hmm.
which was not great. And I have since learned some things to cope with it. But I was very awkward, and I kept telling my parents, "Don't talk about that. Don't talk about that," because I was like, "These people are gonna think I'm weird. These people are gonna think I," and it's like, I'm already at the place. It's they're I'm already like struggling enough to be here, and I'm still just like, don't let them see you sweat.
Yeah, still so
You
in your
are,
head about it all.
and eventually they dropped me off at the group we're doing currently, and I don't even remember what it was because I was just like, because there was an introduction circle, everyone says their name, and I just remember going over in my head everyone's name in order because I'm like, if I forget these people's names, it's gonna be so embarrassing. I don't even remember what we were doing. Yeah, and then we had lunch, and I talked to people, and I was like, I don't need to be here, actually. I don't need to be here at all. Which, now looking back on it, maybe I did. Um, and they were like, yeah, people say that all the time. And I was like, no, no, you don't get it. I'm being for real. Some people say that, but they do need to be here. I say it, and I actually don't need to be here. Which I'm sure is what other people said as well.
Always one of the first reactions. Sounds like
Yeah.
you were welcomed pretty quickly by the rest of the kids, though.
Yeah, it was very welcoming. Everyone not surrounded me, but everyone was very interested in getting to know me. But they also, they were there. They knew how intakes went. You don't crowd the kid. So there were like 3 or 4 people who would come up to me and just talk to me. And I'd be like, okay, yep, okay. And I'd make like really baseline small talk. They still told me I was one of the most talkative intakes they've seen, and I was like, really? Because I was saying like such just like reverted to lizard brain stuff. Like I
Mm,
was just so in fight or flight. I was just like, yes, where's the kitchen? Okay. What? And they were just like, wow, you're so talkative. And I'm like, I guess. Because once again, I was trying so hard for them not to see that I was struggling, even though I was in a place where it was possibly the most welcoming environment possible.
Then how long did it take for you to start to settle into the fact that you needed to be there and that it was going to be good for you?
I mean, it took me a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Talk
um,
about it. Yeah, that's really common. So it'd be helpful
yeah,
to talk about.
for a few weeks, I was like, I don't need to be here, but I'm not gonna get picked up. So I'll just do the stuff and I'll graduate right at 90 days. And it was all looking good for that plan, actually, because I'm a very stubborn individual. I stayed with that plan for a while, and then eventually I broke. Around day 100? um, yeah, it was crazy because I had been making such steady progress and then I just dipped because I was like, I missed 90 days. What's even the point? I mean, I had made real progress, but there was also a lot of stuff that I had still been covering up because I was like, I don't need to worry about that. And then eventually it all came out, as it usually does. And this is really funny to me. I was in phase 3 for the majority of my Mountain Valley trip because I think I did the ice bath thing, the transition ceremony where you go into phase 3 around 72 days, which is like really early. And then I dropped. It's like, this sucks. I don't want to be here. Why am I still here? I'm clearly better. And I wasn't. And I was like, I shouldn't have to be here. Like, I've already made all the progress. They're still trying to delay me. This place is awful. And then they were like, hey, did you know that by saying that means you're not ready to leave? And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess. And I stayed there for 50 more days.
Mm. So talk to me, you've talked a lot in there about like the progress that you made before you made like the real deep progress. But like what was some of the maybe more still like really good and really worth talking about and valuable progress, but maybe just a little bit more superficial than like the deep work that needed to be done? Like what was some of the tangible progress that you made that you were using as evidence to support your reason to leave?
Well, a lot of why I didn't go to school was because big crowds, social anxiety, a lot of that. Um, and I had very steadily made progress with a lot of exposure therapy, doing embarrassing things in public, which is which is great.
What were some examples? Give me some exposure
Oh,
examples.
this is one of my least favorite slash favorite ones I've done because it was awful to do, but it was kind of funny. I had to ask someone what they wanted from Dunkin' Donuts, and then I had to purposely get them the wrong thing and tell them, here you go, I got you the wrong thing.
One of your friends from the
Yeah,
community? Oh
yeah.
man.
And I was so worried they were gonna be like, this isn't what I want. Why did you even ask me? But instead they were just like, thanks for getting me a drink. And I was like, oh,
Mm.
okay.
So
Oh,
what'd you learn from that if I were to reframe it in the exposure language? Like what did you learn from that
yeah.
experience?
It was that people, like, they're not hyper analyzing everything you do.
Hmm.
People are caught up in their own things. They're not gonna be like, this person got me the wrong drink. They suck. They're gonna be like, this person got me the wrong drink, but they still got me a drink. Like, that's still nice. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah. It was nerve wracking, and then it happened. And I still think to this day that I didn't tell the person that it was an exposure because you're not supposed to do that. So if they're listening to this podcast, hey, that was an exposure.
Great example. So social anxiety, being worried about what other people think was a big limiting factor for you as far as your ability to participate to a lot of social exposures. What other fears and exposure work did you do during your stay?
I wish I had like written them down or something because a lot of them were very. Oh, there was one, a simple one. I have to order for myself at Dunkin' Donuts. Sounds normal to most people. I was petrified. I had to go in by myself, and I was like, I'm a minor. Are they even gonna serve me? Like it's a bar. It's a Dunkin' Donuts. And I walk in and I ask for what I want. And I don't know how this happened. Because this wasn't even part of the exposure. They forgot to get me a donut. And I walk out and I go into into the little the red car with my therapist, and she goes, "Oh, where's your donut?" And I go, "They forgot to give it to me." And she goes, "Go back in and get it." What? So then I had to walk back in and go to this. I was so anxious. I was like, "Hey, you forgot to give me a donut?" And I had my receipt, so I was like, "Hey, I should have gotten a donut." And they were like, "Oh, okay, you can have two." And then I was like, "Yay, two donuts!" And then I go back into the car and they gave me a second free one. And my therapist goes, "Choose someone to give it to." person. One person. And that was obviously nerve-wracking. Because somehow this little exposure had turned into 3 exposures.
Mm.
Where I then had to choose just one person out of all of the people I was friends with. And I was so nervous because, I didn't want anyone to think I didn't like them or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember who I ended up giving it to. I think whoever I gave it to ended up splitting it and giving it to another person. And then it's like, well, okay, great. Best outcome, I guess, but also not the exposure, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That was my trifecta of exposures. And then there were some other simpler ones. There was shoe shopping, because I just didn't like shopping for shoes. I didn't like having to, take my shoes off in public and put on random other shoes.
Mm.
I didn't like the idea of it.
Yeah. It's an awkward thing.
It's an awkward thing. And also, who else's feet have been in those shoes? There was Halloween costume shopping, which was obviously to get me a Halloween costume. And also because I just hated being, in public with, a authority figure who was, talking to me. Because then I'd have to talk in public. I don't know why, but that was so nerve-wracking. Because I was like, she was like, do you want this costume? And I was like, no. And also, I can't speak to you. But I did eventually find a pretty good costume. It was a horror movie costume. That's off topic.
That's okay.
Yeah, so those were
just a lot of little things that are genuinely uncomfortable, but just getting practice, sitting with that discomfort and being uncomfortable sounds like a big theme for you.
Yeah, those were my more fun exposures. The ones that are off campus are always more fun. There were also ones that were just tell someone a vulnerable secret of yours, which are the more common ones, where it's just hey, be vulnerable to this person. And I was like, do I have to? I really don't want to. But I did. I ended up, you have to end up talking about your problems to get them fixed. Alas. Wish it could be another way. But, so a lot, so many, were just hey, bring up a vulnerable thing every night to the group. I don't want to do that. But I did. Because it was my homework or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting now, Elizabeth, to hear you share all this, because when I now think about ways in which I saw you in the community, I knew you were anxious, but to understand the extent that they must have been really tough exposures for you, our milieu norms meetings, and the way you used to speak up in those meetings and give people feedback, or offer something to the community as far as something you think collectively we all could be doing better, knowing how deeply you care so much about what other people think. I said, I could see you were anxious in those moments, and anyone would be anxious in a big group setting giving feedback like that. But now having this additional context, how incredibly brave of you to be able to speak up at those times that you did.
Yeah, milieu norms meetings were really bad for me. Because I was what if they talk about me? I don't remember if they ever did. I don't think they did. But it would have been horrible if they did. So I took it into my own hands, and I was like, okay, if I'm going to make this an exposure. I did a lot of exposures that I was I don't want to do this. I better do it. So there was a milieu norms meeting where I felt like I was being the worst person in the world. Because I was like, hey, can you stop doing this one thing? Because it was a group of people who would continuously do this one thing that I was a little uncomfortable with. And I was like, hey, can you stop doing that? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, oh my god, I'm an awful person. Which, obviously the feeling faded. And they didn't even react like I was, awful. They were just okay. And then I was like, whoa, I can't believe I said that. Do you think it came out as harsh? And it was just I was so anxious.
It's just some context for listeners who either haven't been in Mountain Valley or haven't been in residential treatment to the word milieu, right? So a milieu is a therapeutic community that's intentionally designed. So milieu therapy is a type of therapy that was developed in the field of psychology, where you use a social environment to help influence change. And at Mountain Valley, as Elizabeth can attest to, we're really big on milieu therapy, and the milieu is a big part of the treatment process. So we once a month we have a meeting called our milieu norms meeting where we bring everybody together, the residents, oftentimes a lot of the staff, if not as many staff as we can possibly get, to talk about like what's going on in the community, how does this align with our values as a community, and what we sort of want for ourselves to be able to keep this place therapeutic and supportive for people's growth. And it's a anxiety producing meeting, but often a really important one so we can keep the culture at Mountain Valley really healthy, because the culture in the milieu is such an important part of treatment. And Elizabeth, I know from us preparing for the podcast today, you wanted to talk a little bit about milieu therapy and the importance of a good milieu and what a good milieu looks like. So I'll just turn the mic over to you and let you share what you wanted to share on this topic.
I had the pleasure of going through multiple milieus. We call them multiple milieus. A big change of people, and where like the dynamics are switched and everything. We just called them a different milieu, but it was just like different people, different dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
My first one was pretty good. My second one was amazing, and I think that's the one I went up to until I graduated. And when I graduated, I went to a different program, which wasn't great for me, and they did not have a great milieu. And I realized, like, wow, it's so important to have these, like, conversations. Because, like, they didn't have a milieu norms meeting, obviously. And a lot of the people would just, like, not talk on their feelings. And I was like, wow, I kind of miss having that milieu norms meeting. Like, I miss having this incredibly, like, healthy social dynamic with, like, all these people who were just friends with each other, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so important to make it, like, a safe space for people. Because a lot of people, when they come into a residential or a milieu of some sort, they'll be like, oh, I don't want to listen to these other people's problems, like, which is weird to me, because I always loved helping people, because it distracted me from my own problems. But a lot of people, I mean, obviously you put a bunch of kids who need to go to residential in a residential, there's going to be some drama. But it's hard for a lot of people to talk about it because of the anxiety they have or something like that. Probably that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very lucky to be in a great milieu, but I've also experienced a not so great milieu. I've got some tips and tricks, being open to everyone's, like, way of communicating and their own opinions, different upbringings. Don't just be like, you did that? I no longer want to see you ever again. You're gonna see them. You live in the same building. So it's just keep an open mind. Like, these people are all here to get help. We all have something in common.
Mm-hmm.
So you might as well, like, just seize the moment. You're gonna find friends, but also don't get too comfortable with just the same, like, 3 people. I was very social. I branched out a lot. I think it's very important in a milieu that everyone is sort of one thing. I don't like it shouldn't get cliquey.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes there were, like, small cliques that formed, but most of the time they honestly just, like, grew so big that they just became the entire milieu at a point. Because you're not going to stop teenagers from, like, making friend groups, but I think it's very important that everyone sort of understands where each other are coming from and cares about each other. Easy for some, harder for others, but, listening to where people are coming from, stuff like that. It's having a healthy milieu and contributing to a healthy milieu is going to make your journey so much easier if you have people you trust.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Like, for me, the milieu norms meetings are a way in which are times in which I assess how the group is doing from a dynamic standpoint. Like, for me as a therapist, we're taught to read group dynamics, and so I can tell by how much conversation is happening, how the feedback is being given in the meeting, all of that, like, sort of where they're at in their group development, where there's stages of development for groups. When you think about group psychology, all groups, families, classrooms, teams, therapeutic groups, like human group psychology is a whole study and theme in and of itself in the field of psychology. And yeah, just to sort of what you were saying, though, that the more we can build trust, and sometimes those meetings are where the trust is starting to be built if we facilitate them appropriately, the better your treatment experience is because social feedback, having other people in your life that can be a good, honest, reflective mirror for you in a way that's kind and compassionate and understanding is something we all need. Like, I can't tell you how much, even for me as a director, right? Like someone who leaves the program as a staff member, like I'll see something on their exit interview, like where they sit down with HR and do a little bit of an exit interview, and they'll be like, and I have this feedback for Zack, and it's like a whole list of feedback. And it's like, I love that. And also, like, if that had happened, like, while you were here, like, if you were able to, like, say those things to me, like, my own ability to grow would have been so much more. And so, like, we're actually not only sometimes it's selfish to hold back feedback that you have for people, right? Because you're stunting their growth because what you have to say to them could be the one thing that actually really lands and really helps them take the next step in their own treatment process. And you guys really unlock each other's treatment in a way that staff never can't do. Like your feedback to each other as peers is more important than the feedback that we're giving you along the way. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I mean, giving each other feedback is so important. We even have social surveys, which are literally just like, how am I doing in this? Like, a literal sheet to give someone feedback. And those are so important to, like, know what to improve on and how your peers see you and, like, just to be a well-rounded person and liked in the milieu. Like, having a, yeah, essentially being, not like you're not going to be liked if you don't follow those, but it's easier
Hmm.
if you're not, if you give someone feedback and they listen to it and they take it and they improve. It's like, wow, that's impressive. That is an impressive feat.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So before we start to talk about your transition out of Mount Valley, what happened and where you are now in your life, you mentioned just a couple of times that the post 90 days, day 100, there was like this like big awakening. Is there anything you want to share there? Like what was that like deeper change that you feel like happened?
I think it was a lot of, I realized I could, like, work on other things while I was here besides just social anxiety and school avoidance. Because I was like, I'm going to work on those two things and then I will be a well rounded individual. Not really true. I had a lot of other problems, a lot of intrusive thoughts, stuff like that. And it sort of all, like, it exploded essentially. Because I masked very heavily for a while. And eventually, when I was like, oh, okay, I don't need to mask anymore because I'm better, I had essentially convinced myself, okay, I am good now. And I took the mask off and I was like, wow, I don't feel good anymore. What happened? What
Mm,
changed? Um, and there was a lot of stuff to still work on underneath the mask. Because even if you're masking so hard and you can still see anxiety poke through, that is a lot of anxiety. So eventually, when I was like, okay, all of the anxiety on top of my masking is gone. I can stop masking. And then of course there was more anxiety underneath the mask and more problems and more
mm,
stuff and you know you can't I don't know what I expected cuz I had essentially just been like refusing to talk about these things for my entire treatment, and I was finally like, okay, now that I'm almost gonna leave, I'm ready to talk about these things. And it was like,
mm,
wait, that's a problem, you need to work on that. I was like, oh no.
mm.
Now I don't get to leave. And then I stayed a lot longer because I was having some trouble thinking that I'd ever get better because I thought I had gotten better, and then I was like, wait, I'm not better.
Mm.
It's a lost cause. When it's never a lost cause. That's just never is.
Especially when you're that far along and we've established so much trust and such a good relationship with you. That's the primary time when we're ready to start to do the work. I want to invite you, and you don't have to, but if you're willing to, like, what were some of those things that you had never really talked about that were going on for you?
I had some self-harming tendencies that I was like, I'm just not gonna do them, which isn't how you should deal with it. You should not want to do them. And then eventually when my mask came off, I was like, oh, I'm never getting better. I might as well just act on all of these. I had a lot of intrusive thoughts that people hated me or I was going to hurt people, stuff like that. And because of those intrusive thoughts, usually it would just be like, oh, I just have to like do something good to outweigh the bad or something like that. Or like I would random things that I just had to do because I had to do something good or I had to do something perfectly to outweigh the bad, blah, 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 because I'm just a bad person, but I'm really not. But eventually it came to, I was essentially tricking myself into self-harming, where I was like, you're a bad person. To not be a bad person, you have to be guilty. And the only way to show you're guilty is by self-harming. And I thought, that makes sense. Doesn't really make sense. And then, of course, it was, oh, you're self-harming, you're a bad person. So it was a loop. It fed into itself. Where I was like, wow, I feel so much shame from self-harming. I'm a bad person. I must show guilt. I wonder what I can do. So I essentially had that, like, all come out when I was, like, getting ready to, like, like, right after phase 3, like, we're talking about maybe graduating soon. And then I'm, like, hurting myself. And they're like, wait, what happened? And I'm like, I just felt I would never get better. Because we were talking about graduating, and I still felt sad, I still felt anxious, and I was like, maybe this is how normal people feel, I don't know. So I was like, well, if I'm better, that must mean all the thoughts I'm having are normal and should be acted on. Not how that works. Even the most mentally healthy people can still have intrusive thoughts. So
Yeah, intrusive thoughts are a really common part of the human experience. I was just teaching a class to some students in college yesterday. I'm teaching them about OCD, and I was like, "You ever drive over a bridge and like think in your head like, I wonder what happened if I drove off this bridge?" And like, you ever been walking near a ledge and think to yourself like, "What would happen if I throw myself off this ledge?" And what happens with most people is they're able to be like, whoa, that was a weird thought. Let me just let that go and not jump off the bridge and move on with my day. But people with anxiety and OCD, they latch onto that and then they judge themselves for what they're thinking. And they say like, well, because I thought that, does that mean I actually want to do that? Does that mean I'm a bad person? Does that mean I'm suicidal? Right? And they get very tied up with the content that comes into our mind, where a lot of times we don't really have control over that. Sometimes it's like an unruly radio antenna that picks up frequencies that don't make a whole lot of sense and they just kind of protrude into our brain. But yeah, intrusive thoughts are a really common part of the human experience. But people with anxiety and OCD experience them differently and get very attached to them and very worried about them because they're very empathetic people typically, and they're very thoughtful and they're very caring and they're curious about why these things are showing up in their mind.
And then, because I was so depressed, I went back to my state pre-Mountain Valley, which was staying in my room for a while. Just staying in bed, missing breakfast, sometimes missing lunch, missing a lot of things.
Yeah.
And then I'd come downstairs and people would be like talking to each other and be like, that means they hate me because they're not, they didn't miss me. And it's like, I wasn't there. That's my fault. Like, what did I expect them to do? Come running up the stairs begging for me? Like, yeah, so I essentially had like one problem and then it just snowballed into the next and another and another.
How did you pull yourself out of that?
It was hard. It felt like, I mean, obviously it was hard. I just had to sort of start doing it. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I was just like, I'm stupid and I don't deserve to be here and blah, 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 and I'm not going to get out of bed. I guess I could get out of bed, and I guess I'll just go downstairs and do nothing, right? Like, why do I have to be in my bed? I might as well just do nothing downstairs. And then it turned into, well, I'm already downstairs. And obviously sometimes there were setbacks. I would go back upstairs. I'd be like, oh, I'm already downstairs, but I could not be downstairs. And I'd go back upstairs. But eventually it just gets easier and easier as I was like, okay, I'm downstairs. I'll go do the group therapy or something. Or I'll go do this. Or I'll just do something. Get out of bed. Stop my depression from controlling every single facet of my life. Because what I've been told is you have to do the exact opposite of what your brain is telling you to do in those situations. Where it's like, stay in bed, everyone hates you, don't interact with them, they don't want to see you. Like, just do the exact opposite. Get out of bed and go see those people, because they probably don't hate you.
Yeah, it's a skill that we call opposite action, right? And that's a really important one. And I love, you really touched on a concept that I love to talk to people about too, because they're always like, well, how do I make change, right? And I'm like, the same way that we ended up in the bad place we are is the same place we end up in a good place. It's one small step at a time. Like, you didn't get to this bad point in your life in like the course of one day. It was like a snowball of like a couple of bad days that turned into a bad week, that turned into a bad month. And like, what gets you out of that is a couple of good hours that turn into a couple of good days, that turn into a couple of good weeks, that turn into a couple of good months, right? It's this slow process of just accumulating. Like, I like to think of like pebbles on a scale. Just like the more pebbles we can drop on the positive side of the scale, even if every now and then there's still some ones that get dropped on the other side of the scale. If we're putting more on this side, eventually the weight will start to tip and things will start to head in our favor and the snowball starts to get moving in the right direction again.
And like, once you're on the side where it's like you're working on yourself, you're doing things for yourself, it gets a lot easier to keep doing that. It's harder to change your routine
Mm-hmm.
again because it's like, well, I already started like getting out of bed and eating breakfast and blah blah blah. Like, might as well just continue doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Routines have a way of continuing themselves forward for sure. So you get yourself back up on your feet. You had a really great graduation. I remember it very clearly. Celebrated you well. You deserved it. You had a really good grad speech. You spoke about your time well. You wrote a really good final narrative. I remember that as well. After Mountain Valley, like, what happened? What happened next? So your journey in Mountain Valley was very nonlinear, and your journey after Mountain Valley has also been very nonlinear. So let's talk about the transition
Very
piece.
not later. Um, as soon as I left Mountain Valley, I went to a therapeutic boarding school because I was still a little anxious, still a little depressed, had to go somewhere with more support. I went downhill very quickly. And that routine that I had built up had all been broken. Had to learn new things, had to do new things. This place, I hated the place that I was at. I was not for me. I don't think it was a good decision for me. I still don't, honestly. For the first, like, week or two, I stuck through it. I was like, okay, I can get out of here. I can do this. And then I was like, I just hate this place so much. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to go to therapy. And it was worse than however it was at Mountain Valley. I'd stay in bed for 48 hours. I just wouldn't
Mm.
get up to eat. I would just waste away. People would come into my room. I would refuse to talk to them. I, I wouldn't eat breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And I would often go days without, like, eating or drinking even. I had a water bottle. I'd drink it in the first day, and then I'd have none for the next days that I wasn't getting out of bed. And then they decided to start taking privileges from me, as you do when a person isn't doing anything. But I also already wasn't doing the privileges,
Mm.
so it didn't really do anything. Where they were like, okay, you don't want to get out of bed? You can't, like, go on a weekend trip. And I was like, okay, I'll stay in bed. Because what else was I supposed to do? And eventually, my parents were like, yeah, this isn't working. And I was like, really? I can see that one. Because it was also a wilderness program. Um, and when you keep, I had gone straight to the therapeutic boarding school program because I was, working on myself and I didn't really need a wilderness. Um, but then I dropped so heavily that they were like, maybe we should send her to wilderness. And my parents were like, yeah, we're not going to do that. Um, and I talked to them and I was like, oh my God, please get me out of here. I'm sure it has helped tons of people. Did not help me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
It just wasn't
my
a good fit.
parents,
Mountain Valley is not a good fit for some people too. So it's just when it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit, and it can sometimes make things worse.
yeah.
Yeah.
And eventually I left. My parents pulled me out. It wasn't like a against decision thing. It was I had a sort of graduation where they were like, "Well, you're doing okay." In fact, almost as soon as they told me I was gonna be leaving, I was like, "Okay," and I started getting out of bed and I started
Mm.
doing the stuff because I was like, "Wow, I don't have to be here anymore." Um, and I did the like little graduation thing they do, and then I just went to a boarding school after I had done like all of those, like after I like stayed in bed for days, and I thought it was gonna go poorly, but it didn't. And I went to school every single day until summer, and I missed a class like twice, and I I honestly was expecting worse almost, which sounds bad to say, but with my my history, I was like, oh, it's another school. It's another school switch. I've switched schools a lot. Um, but apparently something else had changed. Because I was getting out of bed. I was feeling a lot less anxious and I was talkative and yeah, and now it's summer, so
Yeah, and you had a great school year, it sounds like, and you're really kind of doing the best you've been doing in a really long time.
yeah, it's crazy, honestly, because I'll be like talking to my friends about like if they have mental health problems or anxiety and they want to talk to me about it. And then I'll be like, wow, I can't believe like I used to be like that. Like I
Mm-hmm.
used to be so scared of the world that I would hide under my covers. And like I just I feel like I'm just so different now. Like I said this thing to my mom in the car while I was driving home from Mountain Valley because I had a little break. Or actually, I think I was driving home from the other place I was at. And I go, I don't think I can be fixed because I'm not broken. And she was like, wow, that's really profound. And I was like, thanks, I guess. And I said something like, I can be mended because there are problems that I have, but it's I can't be fixed. Like there's nothing that's gonna be like a fix 100%. I am completely great now. Also because I'm not like a alarm clock that stopped working. Like you can't put a few screws in me and I'm good again. Like there's no fix. There are just a series of patches. Not like a band-aid fix, but like you're slowly building yourself up, essentially. And then when you do go back down, you know how to build yourself up. You've been through this before.
Mm-hmm. And if I can say, and feel free to disagree, one of the things that you don't need to be fixed. There are little patches that need to be dealt with, little mends. I love that analogy. And a lot of times, at least from my experience, what a lot of Mountain Valley kids need, they need to be loved. They need to be cared about by people beyond their family who they think are supposed to do that, right? Like, of course, you love me. You're my mom. But like to hear that from like good friends and like go back to that milieu concept, like people who like genuinely value you for who you are and what you bring, and people you've been imperfect in front of, but they still show up for you anyway. Like those kinds of deep life lessons that make you feel like, you know what, like I am worth it and it's worth it being a part of this life and it's worth it being a part of this community. That does more healing than any kind of fix or coping skill or any other the smaller things that we do in this therapeutic work, at least in my opinion, is like realizing that you matter to other people, and that you can also help other people feel like they matter by contributing to their lives. That's a really important thing to recognize throughout the therapeutic process.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's shocking. Like the first time that I was vulnerable to someone, and then the next day they were like, "Oh, hey, Elizabeth," and I was like, "You still want to talk to me?" But it's just such a supportive place with such supportive people. I guess when I was there, I mean,
Yeah.
I can't really talk about the milieu right now. I've been there in a bit, but I presume it's the same.
Mm.
It honestly, like, it saved me a little. I was so lost beforehand. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just staying in bed, and I was like, the world doesn't matter. Like, no one wants to see me outside.
Mm.
And then I went to Mountain Valley. I found these people who genuinely cared about me and wanted me to get better. And I was like, whoa, maybe I could get better. Because the hard part is a lot of, I didn't really want to get better. I was like, I'm not getting better, and you can't force me to get better. But then I found other people who wanted me to get better, and the first step was, I'll get better for them. And then, of course, it turns into, I'll get better for myself. Because I found these people who were like, I want you to get better. And I was like, okay, fine.
Well, Elizabeth, really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, and again, doing another demonstration of vulnerability for everybody. We care deeply about you. I can't tell you how much it means to us to see you continuing to thrive. And when you reached out to do the podcast and we had a chance to go back and forth and hear about how you were doing, like, I ran out of my office, like, grabbing people in the hallway, Cody, Nathan, Miranda, like other people. I was like, I just talked to Elizabeth. Like, she's crushing it. Like, she's doing great. And like, so super happy we're able to get together and record this. I'm super happy for you and the way you've taken ownership of your life and how well you're doing. Yeah. And thanks for doing this, and keep up the good work, and look forward to continuing to see you crush it.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll see you at the reunion.
See you at the reunion. Bye.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another segment of Zack's Hacks, where each week at the end of our episodes, we share a quote about fear, anxiety, or one of the related topics that we talk about in the episode. As with everything we put out with this podcast, these quotes are meant to inspire you to go out there and make fear less in your own life. And this week, I decided to pick a quote about social anxiety, given that was a big topic that we talked about on today's podcast. And Elizabeth spoke to her experience with social anxiety so well, and really what some of the costs were for her. And what the cost was something that she actually needed in order to recover and get better. And so I thought that this quote really summed that up really well. The quote comes from Fallon Goodman, who is a clinical psychologist and an assistant professor at George Washington University. And she did a TEDx talk on social anxiety. And this is the quote that she shared with everybody. The real tragedy of social anxiety is that it robs individuals of their greatest resource, other people. And I wanted to use this quote today because, as Elizabeth talked about, one of the biggest things that she's gained through her therapeutic process is other people. We talked about the power of milieu therapy, the power of using others as mirrors, the power of feedback, the power of being vulnerable with someone else and having them still show up with love and appreciation for who you are, despite them seeing your weaknesses. And often what gives us the most healing is connection and love in other people. And people with social anxiety need that more than anyone. But what keeps them from getting it is their own anxiety disorder, right? And so it's this really twisted game that people with social anxiety, unfortunately, have to go through. And I thought that Fallon Goodman's quote here really highlights that really well. And so I'll read it for you guys one more time. And it goes like this. The real tragedy of social anxiety is that it robs individuals of their greatest resource, other people. So for those of you that are feeling socially anxious, you heard it here from Elizabeth. One of the most important things that you can do is just take small steps and begin to put yourself out there. Find your milieu. It doesn't have to be a residential treatment program. It could be a sports group that you're a part of, a local gym that you are a part of, a club that you go to, a bookstore that you go to, a coffee shop, somewhere in your community where groups of people gather and groups of people who are like-minded, who have similar interests, and who are invested in making people around them better. That's what a good milieu does. It could be a family, could be a friend group, could be any group of people that naturally exist in your life.
and lean into those people and allow the power of their love and the power of the connection between you guys to help heal you and help you overcome some of your own anxious thoughts. Thanks so much for tuning into another episode of the show. Super happy to have our show continue to be growing. If you feel inspired to do so, please rate, leave a comment, share on social media, whatever you can do to get this content out to more people, we would greatly appreciate, as we're all out here just trying to make the world fear a little bit less. Thanks so much, and we'll hopefully see you guys next week for our next episode.